Hello and welcome to the Magical Midlife Podcast, where you get a refreshing, uplifting and optimistic perspective on life in your 40s and 50s. I'm your host, Lindsay DeSwart, and I'm delighted that you've joined us here today, so let's jump right in. Hello, welcome back to the Magical Midlife. How are you doing? So today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I have mentioned a few times in the past episodes and with other interviews with my lovely guests that I've been doing a lot of shamanic work. And I wanted to give a little bit of an outline to that, because if you've known me for a while, or we've ever worked together, or you ever did any of my training or workshops or anything, the shamanic healing is definitely a new aspect to what I'm doing. And it has, I'd say it's really helped me through COVID, but more than anything, it's really helped all the people that I've started working with since that I've been going through this training. Yet it also can be perceived as being a bit weird, which I get, However, what I wanted to do, because I do like to make things practical and useful for you, I wanted to give you a little bit of an outline as to what the shamanic work is about. And the reason I want to do that is because it can really help you just in very practical everyday life. One of the things about the shamanic work is it's all about the circle, the medicine wheel. And within that, you have got so many different aspects of everything that we face in everyday life, including, for example, just the seasons. So the medicine wheel is divided up into 4 quadrants. And each of those can be given a season. And then they all represent different aspects of how you move through anything. So, for example, with the training course, we started in the south and then we moved around the medicine wheel, and you go with the seasons. We moved with the seasons and you go around all of the quadrants. And as you go through those quadrants, you face different challenges. And as you face different challenges, you also have different ways of healing. So I'm going to outline those quadrants for you now. If you've ever done any work with a shaman before, or you've read about it or come across shamanic work, you're going to know there's shamans all over the world. And so with that, they all have a different connection to, for instance, the seasons, whether you're in like the northern or the southern hemisphere, about the different animals that they connect to as spirit animals, about the different plant medicines that they use. And so what I'm going to walk through today is the type of shamanic work that I've learned about, and also how it can help you to see things differently, to become more accepting of change in your life, and also to help you perceive situations differently. So let me give you a really practical example. When we first started doing this training, one of the things we had to do was we had to think about a problem and then apply this problem to all 4 quadrants of the medicine wheel. So that's with directions as well. So as I say, you start off in the south and then you move around, and each quadrant will provide you with different wisdom. So the quadrants in the medicine wheel that I've been working with and that I've trained with, in the south, you work with the serpent mother. And the serpent mother, the belief is that she wraps her healing coils around you and nurtures whilst you are shedding old layers, just like the serpent skin. So you're shedding old. You can get rid of old habits, old beliefs, old ways of being. So that's what you do in the south. The south is very practical. It's looking at your physical reality, and it helps you to get rid of physical structures. So it's a very physical aspect, which is super useful, of course. So that's where you start. Then from there, you go to the west. Now, the animal that's represented in the west is the jaguar, and the season is winter. And so the way you can potentially see it in the winter is everything dies back. You get the most amount of darkness. It's when you're in hibernation, actually. So when you're in, the jaguar represents the emotional level, dealing with karma, dealing with your boundaries, facing your fears. So there's so much wisdom when you get into jaguar. And there's also depending on how far you want to go out there for healing. With Jaguar, you can also it's a very feminine energy, because it's all about diving into the sort of the darkness, diving into the problems, the emotion, the feelings about things, and making it okay to deal with those in our feminine way. So from the Jaguar, you then move round to the north, which in this way is represented in Hummingbird. Now, let me just hop back a second, because within Jaguar, if you think about the properties that Jaguar have, Jaguar, it can be very beautiful. It can work in the shadows. It can work in the light. It can work its way through the terrain without being big and bold and brash about it, but it's busily working away, and it can be very stealth. So there's a really lovely feminine quality about that too. Anyway, so then moving on to Hummingbird. Hummingbird is in the north, and Hummingbird is a beautiful energy. It sort of represents the soul's energy, your soul. And if you think about the Hummingbird, the representation or the meaning behind the Hummingbird in this context is, if you think about the Hummingbird will go from flower to flower to flower and just enjoy the nectar and enjoy the beauty and the colours. And the Hummingbird really defies all logic, because it has these tiny wings yet can do enormous distances, and it just sustains itself on enjoying the sustenance and the sugar and the energy of the beautiful nectar in flowers. So the Hummingbird in the north it represents spring, and it really represents the joy and the magic of any situation. So if you think about it, when you're facing a problem, there's the problem where you just want the problem to go away, okay? You've got to change something. So that's where it works within the coaching world. So within the Serpent Mother in the south, you want the problem to go away. So that's about, what have you got to get rid of? What have you got to shed? Then you move around into the Jaguar, into the west. And so then you can really deal with the emotions, the deep down feelings about whatever it is going on, the situation you need to change. Then you move into the Hummingbird, and there has to be some goodness in there. So you can enjoy the energy, you can enjoy the passion that the Hummingbird represents. Because just like anything, when you want something to change and you want to get rid of something, there is a reason, there's something that you're aiming for, like a new goal, something that you really want. Because otherwise, why would you bother doing it? There has to be a new, more exciting alternative. And so that's really what the Hummingbird represents. So the Hummingbird is all about spring. So spring is, it's the awakening. It's the buds of the flowers are emerging. It's beautiful. It's uplifting. It feels lighter. It's getting brighter. So you can see how this medicine wheel, and in fact, the shamanic teachings, how they really tie into the natural flow of the seasons and the natural flow of the earth. And how Mother Earth works, which is why, again, it ties so beautifully into our feminine energy. And then the last one on the medicine wheel is the east, which is where we find eagle or condor. And this represents the summer. It also represents the bigger picture. So if you imagine, or you can picture, the eagle spreading her beautiful wings and just soaring over a situation, you can see the situation completely differently. So when things you've dealt with, the clearing out and the dealing with the emotions and then planting the new seeds, that's when you get the time when you can really enjoy what's grown, what's blossomed, what's flowering. And so that might be because of the seeds that you planted in the spring, the new ideas that have come about. So that's a brief guide into the medicine wheel, but I wanted to share with you how I work with you within the coaching using that, and how you can use it within your own experiences, actually. So, as I say, the shamanic work people can be very intimidated by it. I mean, at one point my mum actually said, "So what is it that you're doing? Is it a bit like a witch doctor?" And, well, I guess you could say that, but it kind of isn't, because it's so in line with Mother Nature. And it's realising that, unlike the lifestyle that we used to have before COVID, and maybe that many people are stepping right back into it as if nothing's changed, it's that go, 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 go mentality. You can't always be on the go. You can't always be expecting everything to be in the summer season, because otherwise, when would anything die back in the winter? When would anything have the chance to recover, to restore? When would you have the chance to plant the new seeds? Maybe harness that creativity within you. Everything follows the lines of the seasons. And when you can sit back with that energy, I guess, it becomes a lot easier to be easy on yourself and to be kind to yourself when you're trying to create something new or come up with a new idea. So I wanted to share that with you. Now, you may have heard other shamanic work. And for example, the indigenous North American teachings of, let's say, the Ojibwe, for example, their summer is in the south, and then their fall is in the west, their winter is in the north, and their spring is the eagle. So depending on the region, depending on the belief systems, will change the shamanic work and change the representations and how you work around the medicine wheel. So let's do a little exercise. If you're not driving, you can start to think about maybe a problem that's bugging you. It could be absolutely anything. It could be a relationship issue, a career issue, maybe a job change. They're saying at the moment on the news that there's going to be a huge change in the recruitment world again, because so many people now realise that they can shift their job and they want to shift their job. So let's take a job, for example, okay? So you know that you might be in a current job and you want to get rid of that job because you really don't enjoy it. So in that case, that could almost be applied to the layers of Serpent Mother in the south, because you want to get rid of that. You want to shed that old skin, because it may be that you've outgrown the skin. And when you look at it in that way, it's the most logical thing in the world. You've outgrown an old skin, an old shell, and it's time to move on, which is great. It does make it comfortable, but it does mean that, okay, something new lies ahead. And there might be, especially after COVID, I think quite a few people are thinking, yeah, I know something new lies ahead, but I don't quite know what it is. So that's exactly where we sit with the beautiful Serpent Mother energy. She holds you whilst you get rid of that old skin that you've now outgrown. Then you move round into Jaguar, into the west. So on an emotional level, are there emotional ties that you had with that job? It may be how you felt like you defined yourself, especially if you've been doing a job for many, many years. You almost can't imagine yourself doing anything different, because you're like, but I know how this works. I know the people, I know the systems, I'm good at my job. And yet in Jaguar, the beautiful energy of Jaguar asks you to dig deep, to find out what you believe about yourself that might be holding you in that same position, when every other bit of you is raring to go and get outside into a new job or a new position. So Jaguar allows you, within the winter energy, obviously, to almost to hunker down and say, okay, I don't need to say anything yet. I don't need to do anything yet, but I do need to just hunker down, sit with this and see how I feel about it and see what my options are. So that's what Jaguar allows you to do. Then the next stage, when you really feel like you're coming out of that, and Jaguar can be uncomfortable. It can be really uncomfortable, and you can have to sit with that for quite a while whilst you let those ideas brew and, I guess, hibernate. Whilst you let those ideas really hibernate to see how you feel before you wake up in the spring, when you actually have come out with a new idea of what it is that you might want to do. And therefore, you might have to sow some new seeds, which, of course, is where spring comes in. But there's that excitement of, it's a fresh idea, it's a new path. What might lie in store for me? You just see this little glimmer of hope. And that's what spring is all about. That's what the hummingbird represents. There is so much goodness and nectar and sweetness in a new idea. And it's exciting, isn't it, to let something like that to brew and to grow, and to imagine what it might be, to get almost like a vision of what it might be. So when you've got all of those, beautiful seeds of, I'm just going to start sowing those seeds, maybe sending out new resume, maybe contacting old connections or researching new areas that you could go into, of course, if we're still using the job context. And then you move around into the summer of the eagle into the east. And so the summer picture will represent, it might be that the new job, you get the interviews. So you start actually doing, walking that new path. And with that, you'll get a very different perspective. If you think about when you're in that, let's say, as I said, we're talking about a new job. So when you're looking at yourself in this new job or you're interviewing for that new job, if you think back to where you were when you were in the serpent energy right at the very beginning, i.e. in your old job, you might think, oh my goodness, I really have come a long way, or I really had to do a lot of work in order to get to where I am now. And it was never going to happen overnight, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't do it. And so once you've got through round the medicine wheel, and then you go to the summer and, you start looking at the bigger picture of what it represents to you and everything, then you're going to actually go round the wheel again, which I know you might roll your eyes and go, no, not again. But again, just like the seasons, that follows the flow of life. You'll go from one thing to the next, one challenge, 1 year, one whatever it might be. And so therefore it follows that natural flow. So I just wanted to share that with you today, because when I've learned this and experienced it in so much detail, and I've used it obviously with clients, it gives such clarity as to what needs to happen next without being able to beat yourself up because it hasn't all happened immediately. And it's also settling into the acceptance that nothing has to happen immediately. That's okay, because things don't happen immediately when you're making a change. And if they do, then sometimes you've got to cope with the fallout afterwards, haven't you? So I hope that's been really helpful. If there is something that you're working on right now, or no matter where you are in the medicine wheel, if there's something that you would like help with, please feel really free to reach out, or just to come over to my website, soulfuladventureliving.com. Come over to the website, check out what's there. There's not a huge amount of shamanic detail on there because for a while I've really kind of wrestled with how do I talk about this and how do I represent this in a way that feels practical and very accessible for people. Now, there are so many different levels and so many different aspects to this. And of course, there is all of the energy work and the spiritual work that goes with it. But of course, that's at a much deeper level. So if it's something that you do want to have some help with and you've been interested by what I've told you just about the introduction to the medicine wheel today, please contact me. As I say, you can do it through the website. You can do it through Facebook, Lindsay de Swart, or lindsay.deswart.ca, or just message me on Facebook. Because if there is something that I can do to help you in this new way, it is an incredibly beautiful, self-accepting yet powerful way of making a change. And I do feel at the moment that there is a lot of people who are really yearning, shall I say. I've got this real gut instinct that now is time for change. Something different has to happen because the old life just doesn't seem to fit. It's almost as if as a community, we've gone through the serpent mother together, whether we knew it or we didn't. Okay, so I'm going to end it there because I don't want it to be too long today. Please come over and comment, share this podcast with anybody who you think may benefit from it, or anybody who's ever shown an interest maybe in some sort of spiritual growth. They might really benefit from this too, because it gives you some new tools to use in a very practical way to get over a problem or to find a new solution. Okay, so thank you so much for tuning in today. I have got another exciting guest for you next week, and it's actually a lady who has completely reinvented her life. So I am very interested to find out what she's done, how she's done it, and where she's going the next step on her path. Anyway, so tune into that next week. Please share this podcast, and thank you, as always, for tuning in and for listening. Take care, and you have a fantastic day. Thanks so much. Bye.